Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome to our webinar. As usual, we'll give it 1 or 2 minutes for everyone to join. I can see people are joining. Right. Yeah, hello everybody. I can see some familiar names. Welcome back. If you are back to another one of our events, and welcome for the first time for those of you who have never joined us for our webinars. We do those quite regularly. For those of you who are familiar, who are on our mailing list or blog, you know that we do quite a lot of online events like this. This one, however, is a little bit different this time, because we are not going to have any demos nor presentations. We're going to have a chat, a discussion. So for those of you who are joining right now, as usual, you should have a chat option available and Q&A option available in your tool bar at the bottom. And during our discussion, at any point, feel free, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat or Q&A, whichever works for you. And we will get to them as soon as we can. And yes, we encourage the discussion. If any of you actually want to discuss with other members of the audience and answer each other questions, please do. We welcome those discussions, and it's not only us that have to answer your questions. If you do have an answer to someone else's question or your own opinion, then as long as it's respectful, then please share it in the chat as well. But yeah, we will aim to get to your questions as soon as we can. Yeah, and you don't have to wait until end of the conversation. We will basically just it's quite free flow, just a chat, really. So there's no particular structure here. So yeah, you can throw your questions in the chat or Q&A at any point. All right, I think, yeah, we're 3 minutes past. So if we have any latecomers, that's all right. I think it's time to begin. So yeah, welcome again, officially welcome to our panel discussion, conversation chat about evolution of Jakarta EE Runtimes post Java 17. So today we've got our 3 panelists, and all of them are from Payara. So this is a Payara sort of represented panel discussion this time, because we quite often have external speakers as well, but this time we are keeping it to Payara, and we've got Andrew, who is our senior software engineer, which basically means that Andrew is very much involved in leading the development of Payara platform. So he's got the insight and hands-on knowledge on that. So if you've got any questions, you can also ask them here today. In relation to Payara platform, in the context of obviously evolution of Jakarta EE Runtimes post Java 17. And we have Fabio, and Fabio is on the service team. He's the leader of the service team, which basically means he's the leader of the team that is responsible for helping our customers that are using Payara Platform Enterprise and helping through Payara support. So he is leading the team that is directly involved in helping our enterprise customers. And we've got Lukman, who is our usual speaker. So those of you who are coming back, you should definitely know Lukman by now. He's our technical writer and Jakarta EE expert, and he is basically responsible for most of the technical and educational content that you hopefully are using to learn more about Payara platform products and how to use them and how to get the best out of Payara platform. So yeah, without further ado, I think I'll now ask you, Lukman, to maybe give us a bit of a context. Why are we even here today? Why are we talking about this? Why is it important? So over to you, Lukman.
Yes, thank you very much, Dominica, and thank you very much for attending this fireside chat. I wouldn't call it a webinar, it's a chat, very much for you as well as for us. In the past, Java was known and in some contexts quite notorious for evolving very slowly. You had a major release once, probably every 4 years or so. And that was the norm very much until after Java 11 or so. And then the cadence changed. Now, as a platform built on top of Java Standard Edition, Java EE, and now Jakarta EE is built on top of that and also needs to take a look at what is happening at the base platform. So now that there is a new release of Java every 6 months, sometimes with new features in incubation, but new features nonetheless, for you as a developer, you probably have questions and you would want to find out what's up with the Jakarta EE platform. How is it going to evolve? How are the runtimes going to accommodate the evolution of the base Java Standard Edition? You may be asking yourself, what can you use today? What's up with the future and all of that? And that is why we are gathered here to just, sort of pick our brains, if you will, of what to expect, what each of the experts here thinks about the future of the Jakarta runtimes post Java 17, because the Java-based Java Standard Edition has become very interesting. It's become very fast-moving with a new release every 6 months and an LTS release every 18 months or so. And I think the next LTS release is Java 21, which is going to come with new features. Now, can you use this? How will the runtimes manage? How are they going to manage and all of those? What are some of the features the experts here enjoy using and all that? So those are some of the things we are gathered here to discuss. And of course, all questions you have, you are more than welcome to ask them in the chat. It's because of that we are here. So feel free to ask your questions at any point in time and we'll do our best to answer them. Now, to set the stage going with some form of preheated questions or preheating questions, I'll just hand over to Dominica to start off the chat for us. But again, for the audience, anytime you have a question, don't hesitate to just ask in the chat and we should answer them as we go.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Lukman. So yeah, without further ado, I do have a couple of questions and you probably have seen those in the agenda. But like Lukman and I mentioned before, if you do have any more questions, then please put them in the chat or Q&A. So let's start with what are the notable features that we should be talking about and highlighting to the Java or Jakarta EE developers? One of you wants to start, really? Andrew, how about you then? Okay, I'll call you out then.
Well, I knew I shouldn't have smiled. I should have kept a clear poker face. So just, the first on my list is obviously that Java 21 is going to be the base. While not necessarily all the specifications are immediately jumping to Java 21 as their base, some of them are still only making a jump to 17. So the JDK 21 features may not percolate through to absolutely every single specification under the sun. The actual platform TCK, not the TCK, the actual platform itself will have a base of 21, which means you need to update. Given that, as Lukman pointed out, JDK 21 is coming out in September, and the current release date off the top of my head for Jakarta EE is around Q1 next year. That is A, coming up very soon, and B, doesn't give you much time to adjust, particularly if you've been a bit lethargic, like most people were making the jump from 8 to 11. I imagine some people might also be lethargic to jump from either 11 to 17 or just make the jump to 21. So you need to be aware of that yes, this is no longer a slow lumbering beast. It is moving pretty quickly. And so some of these 21 features are going to start percolating their way through to specifications.
Right. Thanks, Andrew. Fabio, do you have any of your picks?
Well, as Andrew mentioned, Java 21 will be the base of the next version of Jakarta EE. And if you are a Java developer and you've been slowly following up what's up with Java nowadays, there seems to be a trend where Java is attempting to modernize itself as a platform, because there's a lot of legacy baggage in there, especially with many of the APIs that were originally designed in a completely different context that after 28 years, they no longer are, let's say, prevalent. And I think that the biggest thing that everyone is most excited about is Project Loom and the features that it's bringing, like virtual threads and structured concurrency. Virtual threads, it's always a thing that has been asked on, hey, what's Jakarta EE planning to do with it? And at the moment, the thing is that, well, it's not necessarily virtual threads will affect specifications that much, will affect mostly bundles and the implementations that they're running, because it's us, the ones that provide all of the plumbing and the internal, let's say, mechanisms that allow threads to function properly on Jakarta runtime. And in our case, I think that Payara will benefit a lot from it, because we'll start taking the benefits, of course, making sure that virtual threads are actually bringing performance benefits to our users and our customers. We're excited about it. Again, it's something that we internally have to redesign it a bit, because virtual threads technically are an implementation change that doesn't affect the developer that much. It affects the runtime. So it means that we'll have to do a lot of testing, but it's something that is notable, because in paper, it will bring a lot of performance benefits, especially on newer environments, especially on cloud native environments where performance has to be measured out to a T. And that's something that it's important as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Fabio. Lukman, anything else to add on your side?
Yeah, and just to buttress what Fabio mentioned, virtual threads are going to be a game changer of some sort. Once it's stabilized and finds its way, the runtimes find a way around getting it to the developers, because if there is one thing that has always been a problem to manage very well in a managed environment like a Jakarta EE runtime, it has been managing concurrency and performance and all of that. And once you have virtual threads in the loop, then it's really going to be a game changer. So it's one of the things I'm looking forward to, how it's going to be handled by the runtimes and the specs and all the supporting libraries and everything out there. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And actually, as we're talking about Java 21, we actually have a question from Paulo, who is asking which Jakarta EE will be compatible with Java 21, we know, and when should we expect that version to be released? Is that a question we've got the answer for?
I think I already answered it, or I hope I did, with Jakarta or JDK 21 or Java 21 will be the base version of Java EE 11. Java 21 is coming out September-ish, give or take a month. I can't remember when exactly. And Jakarta EE 11 is coming out Q1 2024-ish, give or take some time. I believe that's calendar Q1, not like tax year Q1 or anything like that. So sometime probably February, March-ish. Or that's the current plan anyway.
Yeah, early 2024, I think. I would recommend maybe keeping an eye on, because all of that information I think is public. Some of the minutes from the committees from Jakarta EE, from Eclipse are out there. So you can keep an eye on those. But yeah, that is pretty much the plan at the moment. So hopefully, as we all know, development can go one way or the other, but that is the plan. And I think we are at the moment on the right track for it. Great. Okay. So yeah, thank you for that question, Paulo. And yeah, if you have any more questions, then keep them coming. So the next one is, what change or changes are you most excited about and why?
Well, I think I can start answering that one. As a developer, I'm mostly excited about the way that Java has been redesigning itself and trying to emulate, well, not necessarily emulate, but trying to catch up with all the JVM languages like Scala or Kotlin that are super flexible. And I actually developed Scala for quite a while, and I liked what I saw in there. It was a complex language to learn, not necessarily something that you would use in enterprise development every day, because again, teaching it and maintaining it is a bit more difficult. But Java nowadays is trying to be more flexible in the way that you are managing types. And it has been introducing a cool set of cool new features. They were on preview, if I am recalling correctly, they were on preview on Java 18, 19, and 20, and some of them will come out of incubation probably on 21, which are pattern matching on switch statement on Java, which allows you to unfold definitions of Java as well. And this is where also a new feature that is going to be introduced called record patterns are going to help, where you can unfold the definition of a class, if in this case as a record, which are easily definable, and design a code that allows you to quickly decide what to do when a specific object is received. And this is something that, again, as I mentioned, it's present on all languages like Scala or Kotlin. It's absolutely amazing because you can see you can do so much in such a little piece of code, where in regular Java now you have to properly either encapsulate that code, or you have to go out of your way to design a pattern that allows you to access variables inside classes in a complicated way, in a sense. But record patterns and pattern switching or pattern matching for switch expressions, which is the actual name of the feature, will allow you to do that. I am most excited about it because, again, I have experience of that using other JVM languages, and I wanted to see that on Java for so long. So it's nice to always or finally have it on the platform. What this will imply for
my thunder, I was about to say, pattern switches was my most famous.
Sorry.
Got favorite.
Yeah. Just to cap it up, I think that for Jakarta developers, there won't be like a big, let's say, revelation or anything. This was just simply made code more manageable. Whether APIs or not take advantage of that, it will have to be seen. At the top of my head, I can't recall if there is any APIs that will immediately use record patterns and pattern matching for switch statements in a way that will simplify the APIs. Probably not, but it will be for the day-to-day developer. They'll see the benefit.
I believe JPA or persistence, for those not in the know, they're looking at using records, but not necessarily the pattern matching.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think JPA is one of those ones which, as I said, is not actually targeting 21 as the base. It's going for 17. So the pattern matching didn't quite make it in, or I think it was there in 17, but it was a basic form, and it's had some iterations since.
It was a previous, let's say, design of the feature, because it has been iterating over the last releases.
So yeah, it's in their plan anyway to have some records support in there, just probably not with the pattern matching.
Yeah, and anything you want to add to this, Lukman, or?
Yeah, I'm looking at the string templates. It's one of the things I really used to love in using Groovy. Groovy used to call it, Groovy calls it G-string. That is a problematic name, but yeah, it's coming to Java, and I'm very excited about that because you can now write much more concise, not concise, much more clear strings without doing a lot of magical incantations or using string builder or string buffer or any of those plumbing stuff. You can now write and then interpolate values in your strings. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, especially within a JPA context as well. You can write your SQL statement and all of that. So yeah, it's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
Great. Yeah, no, there's I think there's lots to look out for.
Well, I'm not necessarily, while that is coming into preview, something not necessarily everybody's already caught up with is the fact that, yeah, the text blocks are actually there, and they're they're quite nice. I haven't used them too much myself yet because I'm largely developing Payara, which still has a base on 11. The text blocks are nice from what I've played around with them. It's much better than just string s equals x plus this plus this plus this plus this break line indent plus. It's much better.
Yeah, probably on an internal way, it will simplify some of the web APIs like JSP or JSF in the way that templating and how HTML code is built at the end. But again, all of that is internal to the end developer, probably won't make that much difference, which is nice. Again, that's not downplaying the role that it will play. That's a good feature to have in Java.
Okay. Great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. I think we did have one extra question, but I believe we've answered it as we were going along. But whoever posted it, apologies, I missed it. Then if you are still interested in getting an answer, then yeah, please repost it again. But yeah, moving on. What of the new features of Java 17 plus do you consider are worthy to codify in the current Jakarta EE specifications? Fabio, what about you?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned there are a lot of new features, and we already covered 3 of them, which are pre-clue, virtual threads. The other one would be recurrent patterns and pattern matching for switch statements, and Lukman mentioned string templating. So along Project Loom, there's a new feature. It's on preview. I think it will carry on preview on 21 because at the moment there is a lot of debate on where to bring it, but that's it's a new API called structured concurrency. And structured concurrency, it's, let's say it's an advanced API for simplifying the way that you will do a structured concurrency on Java. And since Java 8, when it was introduced, the fork join framework in a sense, because it allows you to parallelize computations in Java in multiple threads, and then you could decide whether to join them, whether to join the results of those calculations in one final thread or in a pipeline that you could define where it starts and where it ends. It hasn't been that, let's say, easy to understand. In fact, it's one of the most difficult things to understand when you were starting Java 8. And okay, I want to do this complex calculation. Where do I start? When do I go? And thread management, in a sense, in Java, not necessarily has been complicated, but it has a lot of baggage, as I mentioned. Since again, it was an API designed more than 20 years ago, so that's bound to happen. And structured concurrency, it's meant to simplify the way that it's done. Again, at the moment, there is a lot of discussion, and the API is still changing. But this API, once it's fully set in stone, will probably be something that the Jakarta concurrency API will absorb and will simplify, because Jakarta concurrency at the moment is an API that it's preoccupied with offering developers means to, okay, you are running an enterprise application and you have this complex task that you need to split into multiple threads, and the calculations of these operations or business transactions that you're doing will have to follow this pipeline. So they offer some artifacts and some components that will simplify the way that you do that, but structured concurrency is meant to literally tell the developer, okay, if you need a complex pipeline of parallel computations, this is where you start and this is where you end. And this is the way that you should structure it, hence the name. I am excited about that, but again, I'm still not sure where it's going because the API is still being debated. I don't know when it will be fully realized, probably 23, maybe. I don't know. I've been not following the debate as of lately, so I don't know how advanced it is. That's one of the features. The other features that we are not mentioning at the moment are either low level or things that are not necessarily interesting that much to developers. There is a new API being designed called the Foreign API, which allows Java developers to interact with native coding or native programming. And this is something that has been in Java since its inception. There is a native API that allows you to interact with code outside of Java and with directly the infrastructure of the operating system. This new API, it's meant to modernize that, which is the Java native interface, or JNI, as I think it's called. It was on preview mode. I think it's been actually released as a stable feature on Java 21. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. This one,
yeah, you mean a foreign function? Foreign function,
yeah,
I think
foreign
will be
function and
its third
memory
preview.
API.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Foreign
you.
function will be in its third preview in 21.
Yes. So again, not something, I think that API will be completely out of interest for us because again, Java doesn't do native interfacing in it. Jakarta doesn't bother with native interfacing yet. It might be a API in the future, who knows? But it's a cool API to have because again, it's modernizing an aspect of Java that's been there since long time and it's been bound to have a redesign at some point. There is also some implementations on improvements of garbage collection algorithms. Those are always coming in releases. If I am correct, there is a new algorithm that was introduced well back. I think it was generational Shenandoah, which was an implementation or an improvement of Shenandoah, which was a garbage collection algorithm that was introduced in 12 or 13, can't recall where. But yes, this is another garbage collection algorithm. It has its own parameters and set of, let's say, specifications of why they should be running and how to fine tune it for a specific virtual machine. So of course, and new options for garbage collection are always appreciated on Java because that will allow developers to choose what they should be using for their specific environments. And this will affect Payara and Jakarta runtimes in general, because again, the intention is, okay, you should fine tune your environment runtime depending on your requirements. And I think that there was another one at the moment. I can't remember if there was another change to garbage collection algorithms. So, but I think that from the top of my head, that's most of the features. I'm not sure if I'm missing
I
something.
think there were two. I'd have to read.
There is the
entire
generational ZGC as well.
Oh, okay. So another improvement on an existing algorithm. Yes. CGC is actually a good algorithm for, let's say, special situations where you have like a big heap and a lot of volatility. So it was being, let's say, performant in some scenarios, but I recall that there was some improvements needed. So probably the changes included in the algorithm starting in 21 would make those do. But again, at the end of the day, those changes are not necessarily that interesting to us in the sense that, hey, developers, yes, they will care about this at some point, but not necessarily from the go. This is way into the lifetime of an application, enterprise runtime. Well, okay, now we need to fine tune. What do we do? Okay, these are the garbage collection algorithms that we have, options that we have available. Let's do this. And that's something that we do for our customers in Payara, where they come to us and say, okay, my environment is not to performance. What do I do? And then that's where we start recommending, okay, maybe you should consider this garbage collection configuration. Let me know how it goes. Of course, there's always benchmarking that customers have to do in order to see if they are actually getting improvements out of the configurations we recommend. So it's always important to have these options. So a big, let's say, caveat of this is that, hey, if they want to get these new improvements, they will have to switch their Java runtimes to what's new in order to get better performance in general, in a sense.
Thank you, Fabio. If you don't mind, I'll move to the next question because we've got one from the audience as well. But so it says basically, while I cannot predict the specific details of Jakarta EE 11, it is possible that it may introduce a more standardized approach to handling dependency injection, addressing the distinction between CDI and EJBs. So I don't know if there's anything you want to answer to that. It's not strictly a question, I guess.
I was about to say, where's the question? Yes, this is true though. But there was a big document thrown around a while ago. It's probably still in circling its way around of where people saw Jakarta going in the future as a platform. And yes, that was one of those points of making it much more, making CDI the kind of the backbone of it, because not everything uses CDI at the moment. As you say, some things, EJB is kind of separate to CDI at the moment, largely. So yeah, they're looking at pushing it through a lot of these ones. I think Faces is looking to become more CDI centric. there were 3 or 4, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, that were trying to, in EE11, become more CDI centric. I think Jakarta EE was another one.
Yeah,
because they were dropping at context, and personally I'm for it. I am a simple man. I like to just put at inject and then the magic happens. I don't want to have to remember every single different annotation for injecting something like at resources versus at context at EJB. I want the magic to happen, and I want it to be simple.
Makes
sense.
sense.
So while that is happening, it's not going, to my knowledge, it's not quite as simple as just like click, let's do that. There's a bit of, for anybody who's involved in Jakarta EE and kind of, or watched how the specs kind of make their way through to the platform, there's a lot of dependency shenanigans which happen where this spec depends on this spec, but also depends on this spec. And it's essentially like a Maven dependency tree in a sense of, you've got to be careful when you start moving dependencies around, because you can quite easily break something. I think it was, I'm trying to remember which specifications it was exactly as it went into Jakarta EE10, but I think it was concurrency actually of some dependencies changed around. I think it was concurrency moved to the web profile, and that completely broke something else because their TCK was under the assumption that, yeah, it was still in full profile, but it wasn't, or it was something to that effect. So it's not making its way through every single one, but it's starting to happen that, yes, CDI is becoming the backbone. And there are some other simplification, or not necessarily simplifications, but kind of logical things happening. Just because you mentioned the EJB, they're looking at continuing to move some of those asynchronous related things from EJB over into the concurrency specification, because I wasn't around during the formation of those specifications, because I would have probably been something like 15 years old or something, but it always seemed a bit of a logical jump of, yes, the asynchronous annotation exists in EJB, of course it does, when it was, what? No, there's literally a concurrency spec which doesn't do concurrency for everything. It's a bit disjointed. So there's some steps happening now of moving some of those over into the concurrency spec. I believe for this one, it's not actually lift and shift, it's more of a copy paste, so that you're not just getting this sudden breaking package name change from EJB to concurrency, but those kind of changes are starting to happen and find their way through, and hopefully with the quicker pace of the releases and the actually allowing deprecations and removals from Jakarta EE, this will actually start to happen, because that was another historical thing of similar to the to Java SE. You were never allowed to remove anything ever from Java EE. You were only allowed to make it optional, but moving forward, you are starting to look like you're allowed to deprecate and remove things. That process is still in development, but it is happening.
Yeah, so for a question that wasn't a question, we did have some nice discussion.
Sorry, yeah, I went off on a tangent.
No, that's all right. That's why we're here. Yeah, so I'll move on to the next one then. But yeah, keep them coming again. Even just the conversation topics, really. Not these don't strictly have to be questions. You know, we do have a lot to say about all of it. I actually wanted to start with you, Andrew. I know you were just talking, but considering that you, out of all of us here, are actually probably the most hands-on with Jakarta development, what impact this new release cadence has on you as a Jakarta developer, and obviously in the wider context on other developers? Does it have any impact?
So I think the cadence thing will be interesting. Well, in my little notes that I prepared for this, the thing that I had mentioned of actually the thing that will probably most impact you is the fact that deprecations are becoming a thing now. Of if these are releasing every 2 years, you need to be aware that things will start to disappear, and you can't just have your legacy application, which is 30 years old, and expect it to still work. It's not just bump a number and adjust. Of no, things will start disappearing. And actually, from a developer point of view, this is going to be somewhat surprising to some, that a lot of those methods which are removing or are being removed, they're not actually, like, your IDE won't necessarily register that they're about to be deprecated and removed, because there was a policy that the deprecated annotation would never be used in Jakarta EE, so therefore your IDE would never do its nice friendly crossing strike through to highlight this is deprecated. You probably want to use something else. But also some of these things that are changing are behavioral changes, so they're not actually API changes, but therefore you can't really annotate behavior. So as these behavioral things start to make their way through, such as EJB to CDI, of using a unified injection mechanism rather than everybody using their own, those will start becoming more and more prevalent, and the fact that you need to be keeping up to date with what the changes are happening, because your IDE won't necessarily tell you.
Yeah, so basically you have to be quick, I guess. And how can you, maybe that's a question for me really, how do you ensure that you are up to date? Like, what's the best way? Keep an eye on where and what.
So the deprecations are kind of mentions on the thing, the plan page, that's the one, of if you look through all the different specifications, such as JAXA, EJB, etc., when they do their plan or when they do their release records over on Jakarta EE and like click on specifications and look at them, it should be, when you go to each of the individual specifications, it should tell you in the plan and or in the release record that here are the new things, here are the deprecations. That's currently kind of the best way to keep track of it, because the platform is kind of a constituent thing of 18 or however many different specifications. They don't tend to get listed at the platform level, so you largely need to be aware of what your application is using and then follow what those specifications are changing. So that's probably the best way. And I can see in the chat, can we imagine a flag that will remove everything? So as I said, it's the whole deprecation thing is currently, or the whole deprecation process is currently still in discussion of how that actually wants to happen. It's not set in stone, so if you have thoughts, well, I was about to say shout them out, but I don't actually know where you would shout them out to. Shout them to the mountains, somebody will hear. But
I think this specific one we can probably take away and suggest, because we've got obviously direct influence on it as well. So we can take that away.
If you shout loud enough, somebody will hear. But the use of deprecated or not to use deprecated, that's currently being thought of why wasn't it there. The argument of it's noisy is, to my mind anyway, a bit nonsense. Of yes, but it's a useful noise. But then, as I said previously, it's currently also explained on the plan pages of each of the specifications. And generally the way that the deprecation process is looking to be is that nothing should ever just be completely ripped out one day, is in a sense of something will never go from, here's this thing, it's not deprecated in any way, it's still there, use it, next release, gone. What? There should always be at least a deprecated and then removed stage like that. But other than that, yes, transition. I would say yell loudly
I think buttressing what Andrew is saying, from the stepping back to the EJB CDI stuff, I think if you are a Jakarta EE developer, whether starting a greenfield project or maintaining an existing project, you want to start making the mental shift to making CDI the default for everything you do. So unless you absolutely need to, or you have a very old code, you really don't want to use anything from EJB specification in your code if you're developing something in 2023. Until the EJB features are fully ported to CDI, you really should steer clear of it and then make use of all the stuff you can from CDI, because EJB along the lines will be deprecated. And I don't know if by then we would have settled this at deprecated annotation thing, because it's something I really have a few opinions on. I think we should maintain it because some of us, or a lot of people I know, rely on their IDEs to know some of these things. So I think it should be. But as a developer, you really should keep in touch with what is going on the in the landscape, in the Java ecosystem, and in the Jakarta EE ecosystem. At a minimum, you should be subscribed to the mailing list, and then you can really know what is going on as and when things are changing and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lukman. And thanks for the question, Gabriel, or suggestion, really. Anything else you want to add on the impact of the release cadence? I think we've covered quite a lot on that. It's mostly, yeah, the risks really. So
well, yeah, in my perspective as managing a service that goes out to customers are not necessarily interested in getting the new stuff as soon as possible. They're interested in the stability in most of the cases, because again, big enterprise setups and environments require a stability in the long term, depending on the business. There's, of course, customers are also interested in moving along to the cadence of the current, let's say, landscape of cloud native development, which involves, just not simply thinking about the environment that you're developing, but also where it lives. And this is when we enter the discussion and talk about Kubernetes, Docker, service mesh, and all of the new things that have been codified the last few years. And in that sense, I think it's important to have a faster cadence in releasing more often so that new features are available. But at the very end, the end users are the ones making the shots. If they want to move to new release or not, it's up to them. It's important to offer new features on both, not only the SC front, but in the Jakarta EE front. It's always important to, let's say, be moderate about it. When it's good to make the jump, and when it's good to stay where you are. And that's a distinction that some of our customers appreciate, in that Java as an ecosystem allows its developers and users to know when to do that. Because again, even if you are running on an older Java version, which you should be, in most cases, you should be running on long-term support release and have a proper vendor support in that case. And if in the case of our customers, we have support through Azure, and some customers and some vendors will, users will probably use OpenJDK, and they will not care necessarily about, let's say, support and patches and all of that. But it's important to wonder, should I move or should I stay where I am? There are a lot of considerations in place, but for the vendor and the runtime, it's always important to give that option to customers. So it's preferable to have a faster cadence, but it's also good to ask the question, should I move or should I stay? And accordingly to your needs.
Yeah, thank you, Fabio. And that actually quite nicely leads me to the next question, because you started with obviously from your point of view as a service delivery and working with customers on enterprise, the security and stability are quite big features, quite big points of interest for enterprise environments. So do you have any recommendations for what new Java features should developers adopt to improve the overall safety of their environments?
Well, there's always whenever there are new Java releases, there's also some recodifying of the internal cryptographic suites used by Java, because again, the runtime will defer most of these concerns to, in this case, the Jakarta runtime will defer most of these concerns to the Java runtime, which is the one that has the cryptographic extensions and suites and algorithms available for the traditional secure communication on a modern environment, which is just HTTPS and TLS and all of the protocols, secure protocols that you should be using when communicating across services nowadays. There is a new API that I omit a way back when we were discussing about this, because again, I wanted to make the segue into this one, this specific question that we are handling, which is it's a specific API called Key Encapsulation Mechanism that is an encryption API redesigned for implementing and securing symmetric keys on Java. And this is something that you can do now on Java, but it's a bit convoluted. It is low level for most developers, but for us implementers, it will make us way more, let's say, give us more and more power on how to properly manage cryptographic keys from Java. I think that this API is going to be included formally on 21. Again, I'm not exactly sure if it's still in preview feature or if it's a full realized feature that will be deployed on 21. But the intention is that using this API, we can allow the runtime to have better control of the keys and how they generate it, how they manage it. And you can allow these keys to go onto a higher level when you're running a specific protocol like transport layer security or TLS, and use them in a way that you can implement specific algorithms. If you don't want to use the default ones that are common with Java, you can use implementing specific algorithms that interact with these keys in a way that the runtime doesn't have. It is a good API to have. I think it will improve the way that security is handled at the runtime level. But for the day-to-day developer, because again, developers mostly are not necessarily care or concerned with security. They're just simply concerned with shipping code, as usual. But for the architect or the operation staff or the infrastructure manager of an environment, yes, it is important to always stay on top of securing their environment, especially if it's publicly available. Every new release of Java will always have some built up on better security features, specifically if it's just algorithms, or if it's just new cryptographic suites, or it is just a stronger versions of what we have. Because that's the thing, security, it's a never-ending game of catching up and crossing fingers not to get on the news the next day, because you would breach or someone make a mistake, a silly one, and you will not be able to. But Java is usually good on this regard. I know that on the landscape, there have been some big, let's say, breaches through the years. But again, it's usually not people following on top of what you should be doing. So yes, Jakarta will keep doing this. On the terms of security APIs, nothing new. I think that the security APIs on Jakarta are good. Jakarta, I think there is a big discussion on unifying the APIs, because there are 3 APIs that handle security, one that is high level, 2 that are low level, and they are a bit confusing. I think that's good. I think they should be done, because security on front time of Java EE has always been confusing because it is spread across the specifications, and when it was centralized, it wasn't still fully realized. So I think that it's good that we are finally having that discussion. But again, this is making our lives easier as implementers and developers, not necessarily something that it's related to the general security and environment.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
Jakarta security going to eat Jakarta authentication and authorization.
Authorization, yeah.
Yeah, and I can see we've got one more question from Paolo, and I think Andrew, you've been sort of typing the response, but basically the question is if there is a release cadence really for Jakarta EE. So I was trying, I don't have a direct answer other than no. So I don't think there is this is still being defined basically according to the Jakarta EE website right now. So the message currently is that we can't commit to any particular schedule or cadence at this time. However, there is a strong commitment by all involved to significantly increase the pace of innovation.
It's as Dominique said, it's not written in stone. There's no commandment as of yet, but the commit or the strong consensus is every 2 years, and so I don't think that's necessarily strictly tied to the Java LTS versions. It just so happens to happen roughly about the same pace. But yes, it's roughly every 2 years with the option to not necessarily go right Java 27. I can't remember when I can't remember which the next LTS would be. No, it wouldn't be 27, 24.
Yep.
Yeah. Java 24 is out, therefore Jakarta 12 must be have 24 as the base version. That's not set in stone. It's just generally every 2 years.
I think the challenge here is to basically find the balance between innovation and fast development, as well as meeting the needs of the enterprise customers. Exactly what Fabio mentioned, that there's a need, there's not always a need to move that as fast for the enterprise environment as it is maybe for the developer environment. So it's finding that balance. But yeah, I think that you won't find a cadence, you won't find a map anywhere that actually says, okay, you can expect this version in this year. But if you are in the mailing list and if you are keeping an eye on what's happening, you usually will be aware when's the next one coming. So that is like we've mentioned earlier during our conversation, that information is usually out there, what we're working on right now and when it is planned to come out. So this is at the moment as far as we can look in the future, I think. So yeah, there isn't anything set in stone, unfortunately. But if there are any needs or if there's any feedback that we've got even in regards to that, I think the best way is to get involved, really, become a contributor, become a committer on the Jakarta EE front, and be part of it and help to shape how all of this will look like, really, because this is the technology that all of us can get involved in. And you don't have to be a big vendor.
And to just
go on, Lukman.
To quickly add on to what you just mentioned, Jakarta EE, the whole point of moving it to Eclipse Foundation is so that me, you, and everybody can lend a hand. So to see faster innovation, everybody's welcome. For instance, you can sponsor a spec that may not necessarily be part of a given Jakarta release, but it will still be a spec that can be used. For instance, there's MVC, I think there is Jakarta NoSQL, there is Jakarta Data, they are all specs that may not necessarily be part of the release, but they are part of the Jakarta EE platform that can be used. So you can absolutely sponsor a spec and then have all the magic, the Java, whatever you want in it, and then it will be available. So really, this is the whole point of moving it to Eclipse, so that everybody can lend a hand to move it forward much more faster, but in a stable way. So you satisfy the existing customers, the enterprises that want stability, and also for us, end-to-end developers that want the shiny stuff. Everybody is met halfway in the platform.
Yeah, that's right. Right, so I am aware of the time. So I think that leads us really nicely to, I think, the last question, unless we have something from the audience beyond that. But how can Java developers contribute to help align Jakarta EE with the much faster base of Java SE? So we did mention some of it, but I think it would be good to maybe expand on it, how Java devs can actually contribute and help.
So it's all in GitHub now. As mentioned, as part of that shift from Oracle to Eclipse Foundation, it is now all very publicly available in Eclipse. You can see all this stuff. You can raise issues there. You can make PRs there if you didn't even want to go through the rigmarole of raising an issue first and just go take my change. So that's all there. As Lukman previously mentioned, there's the mailing lists, which are also available from the Eclipse Foundation. That's where a lot of discussion happens. The discussions tend to be split either on the GitHub issues themselves or on the mailing lists, sometimes both at the same time, which is always fun to try and keep track of. But I think my biggest point is take part. You tend to see similar faces pushing forward multiple specs, both from the sense of leading them, but also actually coming up with the ideas for them. And diversity is key in that, because otherwise it's not really a vendor neutral thing. It's just whatever one person thinks is a good idea. So not constructive arguments are good. I was told not to argue with anybody, but constructive arguments are good.
We're not arguing here. I just a note from me that I shared some links in the chat that you can find the mailing lists there and some FAQs from Jakarta. But sorry, Fabio, I think you wanted to chip in.
Not just simply to add to that, even if you do not have the confidence of contributing or being part of the community, at the very least, if you are involved as a developer or operation staff, whatever, with one of the vendors like us, for example, that offer a Jakarta runtime, either in a community or commercial way, do talk to them, reach them out, make your voice. The intention is if there is something that you think that we should be paying attention or we're not paying attention to in behalf of our users, absolutely, I will more than happy to help out. Of course, being a company, we do pay priority to our commercial associates as usual, but the intention is always that we're scanning and looking for, yes, there are some good ideas and some points that we are not paying attention that we need to. But as Andrew said, it's always good to make your voice because sometimes if there is no pushback, if there's no contribution, it just simply becomes the show of the usual suspects, and they will, again, not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but the biodiversity is the end goal. And at the end, if we're not getting that, there's no point in having something that it's going out to everyone.
Yeah, anything else to add to that, Lukman, from your side? Lukman, you there? Sorry, I'm calling you out. You froze for a second. Yeah, I just asked if there's anything you want to add.
I think we lost him.
I think we've got a bit of a delay there.
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is that everybody should lend a hand. If not contributing, at least just being a participant in the mailing list, just being subscribed to the mailing list is enough to keep you up to date. So at a minimum, everybody should get their hands involved in the Jakarta EE development, whether on GitHub or on the mailing list. Just keep an eye on it, and then you should be abreast of what is going on. And there is definitely something you can find to contribute to. And that is how we can drive it forward. That is the whole point. We went through this pain of migrating from Oracle to Eclipse, from migrating from Javax to the Jakarta namespace and all that. All this big work is so that everybody can contribute, to set an equal footing for everybody. So do get involved.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is, yeah, as simple, or really as simple as it is. Yeah, we need contribution really to Jakarta, and that's the best way. And that will also help with growing adoption of Jakarta itself, and just making sure that yeah, we do grow the amount of users, and yeah, and we push it forward that way as well. We do have a last sort of a, I don't know whether a question or sort of a advice really. We have 1 minute left, so maybe hopefully we can answer that. If not, we can take it away. So Gabriel is saying, when I was writing API Jersey linking to the documentation to use the API, it was difficult. It means we were adding parameters, responses, changes to the API, but it was difficult to send it to our customers. Will you have a way to facilitate the description of what the API respond, often linked to an object, and describe how the API works? Not sure whether this is something that we can answer now, but
well, that's just to answer explicitly the question, having a way to describe what the API responses are and all of the, let's say, structure of the API, I don't think we have that at the moment, even on Jakarta. I do know there is documentation on each of the APIs. Of course, its implementation sometimes do have documentation. Yes, it's in, I think it's not necessarily up to date at the moment. So I think that's something that we'll have to discuss before coming up to reply. But as a service delivery manager, I can say that our responsibility to our users is always to maintain up-to-date documentation, at the very least our product documentation. And of course, we can contribute making sure that the Jakarta documentation is also up to date. So it's something that we can take a look at.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Fabio. So Yeah, I think that's all for now, because we're at the time. We're exactly an hour into our conversation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, Fabio, Lukman, and especially thank you to all of the audience and all of the questions that you posted. If you do have, if this conversation inspired more questions from you, then send them over to us directly. You can send them to info@payara.fish. You can ask questions on our social profiles, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. We're there. I also shared in the chat a couple of useful links, and the last one I've shared is the Get Involved in Jakarta EE page. It's quite a useful summary of how you can basically get involved. There's different ways depending on how confident you are or how much time you've got, but there's plenty of different ways of contributing and just helping really to push the technology forward and make it the way you want it to be, really, as much as possible. So yes, thank you again, and hopefully we will see you at the next event, next webinar. And yeah, if you have any feedback for us as well, then please share. If you like this format of a conversation, we are more than happy to do more of it. If you have any questions, any topics that you would like us to cover, then do get in touch at info@payara.fish, or again, any one of our social channels. Have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you, and see you next time.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.